And we are here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Lopes Goes Last podcast. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. Also, hit that bell icon so you never miss any one of my videos. Also, please like and share this video so you can help the podcast grow. And please follow me on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Lopes Goes Last podcast on Facebook and at Lopes Goes Last on Twitter. So, not gonna lie to you guys, it has been a very long and very tiring week in my life, and so I do not have a lot planned for this podcast tonight, and it is also coming a day later than usual. That is how hectic my week has been, but that's okay because we're still doing the podcast, and I'm still going to be able to talk about a couple of things that I feel I need to. Two things I'm going to be talking about today. First thing is going to be just, I figured, we're about 60 or so games into the MLB season. Not quite halfway there, but we're getting close. So I figured, you know what? Let's take a look at where teams are standing right now, where they are in their division, where they are in their league, and we'll see just, what surprises me. Which teams are doing poorly that I thought would be doing well, and which teams are doing well that I thought would be doing poorly. So yeah, let's take a look at some of that. And then the second thing that I'm going to be talking about today is, of course, unfortunately, what happened in Game 7 for the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. So, I'm going to start out with the MLB stuff because, quite frankly, that's just going to make me feel a little bit better before I go on a massive, painful rant, because it's going to happen. So, let's talk about the MLB. Where are we right now in the MLB? We'll see. I have pulled up here all the standings here on ESPN to see exactly which teams are doing well, which teams are doing okay, which teams are doing poorly. And I'm just going to start throwing some out there that kind of surprised me. First one off the bat that I know surprised me a little bit is just how much of a step up the Baltimore Orioles have made this season. Now, I didn't anticipate them being worse than last year. Certainly, I thought that they would improve, but I still said that they would be in fourth place. Now, obviously, plenty of time for all of these teams to either fix it or screw it up, depending on the scenario. But right now, the Baltimore Orioles are in second place behind the league-leading Tampa Bay Rays, which does not surprise me at all, given the Rays' track record over the last half-decade, maybe a little longer at this point. But the Orioles are 4 games back from the league-conquering, league-leading, absolute dynamite Tampa Bay Rays, and they're only 4 games back from them in their own division right now. That is how good the Orioles have been this year. Now, to sit here and tell you what the formula has been for the Orioles, I will not be able to do that, quite frankly, because for me, I don't really know a whole lot about the Baltimore Orioles. Obviously, I know some of their players. I know Jorge Mateo has stepped up and had a pretty good year as far as I know at shortstop for them. Obviously, top prospect Adley Rutschman has been doing well. Ryan Mountcastle has, at the very least, been good in the power department, not necessarily so much in the average or on base department in the middle of their lineup. I know he's been doing okay. Outside of that, I can't tell you. I don't really know how their pitching staff is done or how their bullpen's going. I know that they got a couple of guys in the back of their bullpen that are doing really well, but outside of that, I can't really tell you on paper who is carrying this team outside of the obvious Cedric Mullins or something like that. But for me, I have no idea what's going on with the Baltimore Orioles. All I know is that I certainly didn't have them at second place in this point in the year. Now, again, as I said, there is plenty of time for the other teams to catch up, and the Yankees are only 2 games behind them, and all 5 teams are above 500 at this point in the season as of right now. So, obviously, the division is very good. So, the Orioles are going to have a long way to go in order to really make the postseason. If they're going to play, a quarter of their games or so, maybe not a quarter of their games, but quite a bit of games this season against division rivals. So that are obviously very, very good also. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with the Orioles, but that one definitely surprised me a a little bit. The Yankees were doing really poorly to start the season. They seem to have turned things around. They're back 10 games above 500 right now, which is obviously much more like what we thought that they would be at the beginning of the season. And quite frankly, if you look around the league, the Yankees' record, I believe, is fifth best in the league. Let me see. So we've got the Rays and Orioles that are better. Texas is better. And that's it. So they're tied for fourth best record with a few other teams in the majors, and they are in third place in their own division. So that tells you how tough the AL East is this year, first of all. And second of all, yeah, the Yankees are in a much better spot than they were to start the year. Much more like what we thought they would be. So good for the Yankees. And the Blue Jays have been a little bit of a disappointment. They've really scuffled the last month or so. They have not played well, and they are really bad on the road. They are, right now, the Red Sox are 13-14 on the road, but outside of that, they are the only team in the division that is below 500 on the road. They have the worst record in the AL East on the road as of right now. Now, they played, almost 10 more games on the road at this point than they have at home. So maybe if they get a long homestand, that record will start to climb a little bit more. But the Blue Jays are a little bit disappointing this year. I really thought that their pitching would step up a little bit more than it has. And you kind of are just waiting for all these young guys to really take that next step. Obviously, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, guys like that are really good. And they're some of the most talented players in the MLB, but you're waiting for that unstoppable next step, that MVP type next step for, at the very least, Guerrero, who showed it for 1 year, and outside of that has not particularly been an MVP candidate like we thought he would be. So yeah, I would say we're just waiting for guys to step up over there in Toronto. Now let's go to the AL Central, which has just been a dumpster fire. Only one team above 500, and then obviously you have Kansas City, who's one of the worst teams in baseball right now. I really thought they'd be a little bit better than they are. They just really haven't gotten anything going. Nobody on their team really has been even marginally above average outside of Vinny Pasquantino or somebody like that. And they I know they signed Jordan Lyles to just eat innings for them, and I don't think he's won a game for them this year. I think he's 0-6 or 0-7, or heck, it might even be worse than that at this point. I don't know. I've lost track. But the point is, just not good over there in Kansas City. Doesn't necessarily completely surprise me that they're the worst team in that division, but it does surprise me how much worse they are than everybody else in their division. And I made the bold claim that I thought Chicago White Sox would step up this year and be good. They just haven't. At this point, I've given up all hope. I mean, pretty much, I'm sure everybody else did 2 years ago. Maybe I'm the last of a dying breed that still believed in the Chicago White Sox. I don't believe in them anymore. I don't really see much talent that's going to carry them into the future outside of Luis Robert. I don't know. Eloy Jimenez is really fun, and he's good when he plays, but he's just hurt all the time. Even this year, he missed time to open the season, and then he had his appendix explode or had an emergency appendectomy, whatever it was, that he missed, a good handful of games. And it's just one of those things where, you don't know if he's ever going to even be able to develop into one of the best power hitters in baseball like we thought he might when he was 3-4 years ago when he was first coming up, because he just isn't on the field enough to develop into that. Now, we saw what happened with Aaron Judge. It could happen. And not to say that Eloy Jimenez and Aaron Judge are the same. They're not even close. But the point is, you never know what he can develop into at this point. I'm just not sure it's going to be somebody that you can really build a franchise around like they were hoping. Tim Anderson's good, but he can't do it really by himself. And plus, I think he's 30 years old at this point. So, how much more are you going to be willing to count on him to help rebuild a franchise? He's pretty much in the same spot that Trey Turner has been in and Xander's been in, where now they're hitting 30 years old, and it might be time to move on to other pastures there for Tim Anderson. But we'll see. Pitching staff just hasn't been all that great. Lucas Giolito's having a better year, but not a Cy Young candidate for sure like we thought he was and like he used to be a couple of years ago. Lance Lynn hasn't been very good. He's a fastball pitcher whose fastball gets hit very hard most of the time. So, Yeah, it's just not really going well there. Dylan Cease has not been, to my knowledge, Dylan Cease has not been all that great this season. I am going to check on that because certainly it might just be something that I'm not hearing about. Yeah, no, he's doing really bad. That's what I thought. Okay. So, yeah, instincts were right there. He's got about a 5 ERA right now, and we thought that he was going to be an MVP candidate, not an MVP candidate, but I know that some people have gone to the podcast and said Dylan Cease might win Cy Young this year. I really thought that that was possibly the case, and he just is not shown up at all this year. He's really done poorly. I mean, I'm just looking at his last, this season from April 10th till May 28th, which was his last start. He's only gone above 6 innings once, and it was 6 1/3. So you're talking about a guy that last year was really eating up a lot of innings, and this year it just has not gone well. 5 innings, 6, 4, 4, 5, 5. Had a little bit of a better stretch in May, but still not great. He's given up 3 or more runs in all but 2 of his starts. So it just has not been good for Dylan Cease this year. But anyways, yeah, the White Sox at this point, I think I was pretty much the last one to have any hope for them, and I don't have any anymore. So, and then Minnesota, they're leading a pretty poor division. So good for Minnesota. I don't really have a lot to say about that. I mean, I don't even know if they're really all that good or if they've just played a lot of bad teams because their division's really bad this year, and so their record's a little inflated. And then, I really thought Cleveland was going to be up there. They're in third place right now. Their team's not very good. Detroit being in second surprises me considering their offense is like 29th in the MLB in run and producing runs and batting average and all that stuff. So that surprises me a little bit, but yeah, that division's just a dumpster fire. Let's be honest with ourselves. And then the West, I got to give credit where credit is due. I did not think the Texas Rangers were going to take a huge step up this year. I thought that they were still a year or two away from really being a playoff contender, and they have proved me very wrong. And listen, I'm wrong often. I like to think I'm right sometimes, obviously, but I'm wrong almost as often, if not more often. And that's just a part of sports, You do your research, you look at analytics, you look at things on paper, you try to make the best assumptions you can, and the Texas Rangers was one that I just didn't see how it would work in terms of, you paid all these guys a whole bunch of money, but you can't have just a top-heavy roster and then nothing underneath it. But, hey, listen, a lot of guys have stepped up. Josh Jung, at least right now, unless there's somebody in the AL that I'm just completely blanking on, I know Grayson Rodriguez is doing good for the Orioles, but I mean, Josh Jung's got to be at the very least top 2 for Rookie of the Year, if not number 1 right now. He's absolutely just tearing the cover off the ball. He's played fantastic. And obviously you got guys like Adolis Garcia that have stepped up. Their pitching staff has done really well this year. Their bullpen's been a little iffy to start the year, but they've obviously gotten a little bit better as the year's gone along. So, yeah, I mean, the Texas Rangers, good for them. They are leading the division right now. The Astros are on their tail. That doesn't surprise anybody, probably. I thought Seattle would be better this year. I really thought Seattle would be the ones that, maybe not thought, but I was hoping that they would be the team that won that division. Just because I've always been a fan of Seattle since I was a little kid. I like the Red Sox, but I also really just kind of enjoyed for some reason that old Seattle Mariner team. I mean, even when I was a little kid, after all of the studs outside of Ichiro left, A-Rod was gone, Randy Johnson was gone, Ken Griffey Jr. was gone. From 2001 through a few years, I just liked watching Ichiro Suzuki and obviously learning about Edgar Martinez and how great he was just a few years prior, because by the time I figured out who he was already kind of dealing with eye problems, and he wasn't really seeing the ball that well. He was past his prime. He was in his late 30s by that point. So, yeah, I didn't see him in his prime until later on when I'd go back and watch stuff. But I just liked the Mariners. I was hoping that they'd be a little better than they were this year. They're okay I mean, it's really the best I could say. Some of the guys like Ty France, Eugenio Suarez, guys like that, Marco Gonzalez, that they just haven't had as good a years as last year. And I haven't looked at Julio Rodriguez's numbers in probably a couple of weeks, but I know at least a little bit ago he was kind of going through a slump. Hasn't had a year like he did last year. I mean, granted, I could be wrong at this point. Maybe he has. Yeah, he's hitting 246 as of yesterday. Not horrible, but I will say he's done much better as of late. Um, so yeah, he had a yeah, like I said, I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, and on May 23rd, he had a 217 batting average on the season. Now, batting average isn't everything, obviously, but when you're the number one guy, you'd like your batting average to not be 217 on your team. I mean, I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask. Even though, again, like I said, batting average isn't everything, but again, 217 batting average is not even average. Like, it's not like he's hitting. I mean, he is hitting 245, but when I last looked, like I said, he's that's not good at all, that batting average. Even if you are getting on base in other ways, like Juan Soto was hitting around that a few weeks ago, but his on base percentage was like 380, but nobody cared. They just said Juan Soto's hitting really poorly, which he was, because even though he was getting on base, you're still not hitting the ball well. So, but he has climbed up a little bit since then, which is good to see. That's always really, really nice. He had a really, really good stretch where from May 24th to May 31st, he had multi-hit games in all but one game. He had 2 hits, 2 hits, 2 hits, 2 hits, 2 hits, 2 hits, and then 0 hits, and then 2 hits. So that got his batting average up to looking a little bit more presentable for when I had to look at it. But back when I looked at it last, obviously not very good. So clearly, he hasn't really had a year like he did last year. Pitchers are figuring him out a little bit more, which happens to young players. You come up, you have a really good year. Pitchers then are able to do their homework a little bit on you because they know you a little bit more, and they're able to kind of pinpoint a few weak spots in your swing or in your stance or in your approach that you're going to have to adjust to at that point. So certainly no cause for concern for Julio Rodriguez. He just hasn't had as good a year. That's the point. Is there's several guys in that lineup and in that rotation and even in the bullpen that have not had as good a years as they had last year, and therefore slight underperformance, I would say, by the Seattle Mariners up to this point. The Angels are where they always are. Slightly above or slightly below 500. They're just average, as they will always be forever and ever. Amen. And then we've got the NL East. So I picked the Phillies to win this division, and right now they are in 4th. So trust me, I am looking pretty dumb right now. As I said, I get things wrong pretty often. But yeah, I didn't see that coming. I did not see that team who really, really did a lot of spending money in the offseason. I mean, they really went for it. They said, we just went to the World Series. We're winning it this year. Gosh darn it, that's how I feel. And we're spending, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to shore up our rotation, to get more help in the lineup, such as Trey Turner, and get help in our bullpen, and it just hasn't worked. They are horrendous on the road. Right now, they're 14-10 at home, which is not a great home record, but it's still above 500. I mean, that's still a pretty good, pretty solid home record. Like, for instance, the Orioles, who I said are one of the better teams in baseball, they are tied for the second best record in all of baseball right now. They are 17-12 at home, which is right about the same percentage as the Philadelphia Phillies in terms of home win percentage, because they are, the Phillies, 14-10. So that's right about the same percentage. So, so they're a pretty good team. But the difference is Baltimore Orioles are 18-9 on the road, whereas the Philadelphia Phillies, as of right now, are 11-21. To put into perspective, the Colorado Rockies, who are in last place in the West, are 9-20. The Kansas City Royals, who are, I think they have the second worst record in baseball, are 9-18 on the road. So you're talking about you are one of the worst teams in baseball record-wise when you are playing on the road. The only team that I can see that is clearly abhorrently worse are the Oakland A's, who have won 12 games the entire season. They are bad at home, they're bad on the road, they're bad in neutral stadiums, they're bad in space, they're bad in wherever you play baseball. The Oakland A's right now are terrible. So take that one with a grain of salt. But again, even the 17-win Kansas City Royals are right about where the Phillies are on the road. So you're talking about, again, one of the worst road teams in baseball, probably top 3 or top 4, if not top 2 worst road teams in baseball. That's what you're dealing with the Philadelphia Phillies right now. Now, again, it's another one of those scenarios where I'm not 100% sure how real it is, because they have been dealing with injuries. They've been dealing with underperformance of a lot of their guys in their rotation. You know, they've had some injuries in and out where Matt Strom's been... I mean, Matt Strom this year has just been... Somebody who was a Red Sox fan and saw him play last year, he did good for us, sure. But this year he's opened games, he's started games, he's closed games, he's been the setup guy, he's been a long reliever, he's literally been everything for the Phillies, and he's done well in pretty much every aspect of the game this year, pitching-wise. So, goodness, Matt Strom, good for you. But again, a lot of underperforming going on over there in Philadelphia. And again, it's another one of those scenarios where, you know, maybe they are just, their record's going to come back when they start playing more home games. They've played 24 home games and 32 road games, and they are 6 games below 500. So, you know, maybe if you take those 8 and you move them to home games, you know, maybe they're a couple of games above 500 rather than 6 games below. So you just never know. Or at the very least, maybe closer to 500, maybe not above 500. That's a bit much to ask. You'd pretty much have to win 6 or 7 out of those 8 games at that point. But, you know, the point is, they underperformed, and that surprised me. I'm not at all surprised to see how good the Braves have been. They really are bad at home, which is weird, because I've been to that stadium. It is always a fun atmosphere. That might just be a weird illusion type thing where, like, they're not really that bad at home and the numbers will even out at some point. But yeah, they're 18-9 on the road and 15-14, barely 500 at home. So very strange for the Braves. But they're in first place. That doesn't surprise me. That division, you know, I kind of looked at it as maybe they're going to be like the AL East, where all the teams are like way above 500, and that's just a little weird to ask of any other division. And so I guess it's maybe about right where, you know, if they're playing each other and all those teams in that division are really good. Even the Marlins are above 500 right now, which I don't know if anybody expected that. I certainly didn't. I expected them to be either firmly in 4th or maybe even in 5th, depending on how much those young guys for the Nationals are going to step up. But the point is, you know, every team outside of the Nationals are pretty darn good. And even the Nationals have won 24 games. It's not, you know, atrociously bad. You know, that if you're in the Central, that puts you in, you know, 1 game or 2 games behind second place if you won 24 games in that division. If you are in the West, that puts you above the Oakland Athletics. And, you know, it's not great. Obviously, in just about every other division, it's going to put you in last, but like by a game, maybe 2. So it's not like it's horrible. You know, the Red Sox are in last place, but they're above 500. So, again, 24 games isn't great, but it's not horrible. So pretty much every team in that division is going to be competitive, you know, game to game. Not necessarily in terms of winning the division, but game to game, they're going to be competitive. And so it's very interesting to see all the records kind of jumbled in that, like, one little area. I mean, the difference between 1st and 4th place in the division is 4.5 games. So now the Phillies right now are 8 games out of 1st, but if they had 29 wins, they would still be in 4th place. So it's one of those things where, yeah, they're in 4th place by more than 4.5 games at this point, but even if they won a few more games, they might still be in 4th place. Hope that makes sense. But the point is, yeah, I'm a little shocked that the Phillies are doing it poorly. I'm a little surprised that division isn't just overall better. But that's where I'm at with that. Not a whole lot of craziness going on outside of the Phillies, because again, you take the Phillies and you swap them with the Marlins, and that's pretty much where I thought the division would be. Now, I said the Phillies would win the division, and they are clearly not. But the point is that the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies should all be in a league of their own, and then the other two are down 4 and 5. So you flip the Phillies and the Marlins, and that's exactly how it is. So not a crazy amount of surprises. The Central, wow, the NL Central. This has been a very strange season for the NL Central. So the Milwaukee Brewers are basically the Milwaukee Brewers they are every year. They kind of got a little worse in the offseason, but they did make some moves to try and get better. So they're going to hover around 500 like they have been over the last couple of years. I think everybody said that St. Louis was going to run away with this division, and they were the worst team in baseball at one point. I mean, they were so bad. They've been playing better as of late. They are pretty gosh darn awful on the road. They are one of only 4 teams. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're one of only 4 teams to not have double-digit wins on the road at this point in MLB. So, again, another one of their really bad road teams in baseball. They're just not great on the road. And they're in 4th place. Like, that's bananas to me. Now, clearly this is still anybody's division because they're only 4.5 games. There's only 4.5 games separating first and last. So, again, this has been a weird division. So the Cardinals still have plenty of time to figure it out and eventually win the division, which I think is still what's going to happen. But right now, they're really, really struggling. The Chicago Cubs, I thought they'd be a little worse than they are. They've been hovering around that 4th, 5th, 3rd place in that division. I still don't think they're competing for the division at this point. I'd be surprised if they were even close to 500 by the end of the season. But Cody Bellinger has played pretty well this year, which has been really good to see. Justin Steele, from what I've seen, has been a lot better than he has been in the past. So it looks like you've got a guy that might solidify your rotation a little bit over there. Marcus Stroman's been pitching well for them. So it's been nice to see the Cubs kind of getting back to that rebuild, and awesome to see that rebuild is going well for them, because it seems like every time the last 10 or so years that the Cubs have put their mind to something, rebuilding, competing for a championship, whatever it has been, they've succeeded. So good for the Cubs. I hope it continues to work. And then the Pirates. I've always thought the Pirates would be one of the worst teams in baseball until Kingdom Come. But I'll tell you what, those young guys over there in Pittsburgh, they're stepping up. That rotation's getting better. That bullpen's getting better. That lineup's getting better. They're above 500 right now. And so I'm giving them a shout out and the respect that they deserve. The Pittsburgh Pirates, you have probably been the most surprising team for me this year. I genuinely thought that you would just have another Oakland Athletics season where you win 70 games and you lose 100 or you lose 92 or however many games that would be. The point is I thought you'd be pretty bad, and so far you haven't been. You haven't been great, but you don't have a great roster to be great yet. So congratulations, Pittsburgh. You guys have been doing great. And even Cincinnati's hanging around in 3rd place right now. So, and I know that I think they might have just swept the Red Sox. I think so. That's no good, but hey, whatever. The Red Sox are booty anyway. So, moving on to the West. If you'd have told me the Arizona Diamondbacks would be in 1st place 60 games into the season, I'd have laughed and laughed and laughed. But here we are. My good buddy Levi is out there smiling someday or somewhere. I don't know why I said someday. I hope he smiles every day. Levi, I hope you're smiling today. I love you, buddy. But anyway, he's got to be smiling because, hey, the Arizona Diamondbacks are in 1st place, not just in any division, in the division with the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Padres, who are all pretty freaking good this year. The Giants are, out of the 3, they're the worst, obviously, but the Dodgers are perennial contenders every year. And the Padres made a lot of moves this offseason to compete for a World Series. So, the Diamondbacks, with that young core, just being quiet down there in Arizona, rebuilding through the draft, small signings here and there, nothing flashy, developing your young guys. They've got a foundation to be very good for years to come. I didn't think that this season for the Diamondbacks would happen until next year. I thought next year would be the year where guys like Corbin Carroll, guys like Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen's been pretty good for a couple of years, so maybe not Zach Gallen, but the point is, and you know, those other young pitchers, because I don't even think Drew Jameson, has he played this year? 3.05 ERA. Okay, so the last couple times he's pitched, he's come out of the bullpen. Not a whole lot of contribution from Mr. Jameson. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to make, guys, is yeah. I thought that the young guys would really take the big step up next year, which they still could take another one, obviously. But this year, Diamondbacks have played really, really well, and that's another one of the big surprises for me this offseason. And again, I have to say, oh, the Padres, boy, oh boy. I kind of feel bad for Padres fans at this point because, I mean, how many times have you been shown on paper that you're going to be one of the best teams in baseball, and it just never seems to happen? I mean, you trade for Juan Soto, you sign all these pitchers, and it just never seems to work out. You sign Xander Bogaerts this offseason to really shore up that lineup, and it just continues to not work in San Diego. I hope they can turn things around. I know Max in our last, our big fantasy draft video that hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if you have not seen that, check it out. It is so much fun. We had a great time. He said that he thought the Padres would win the World Series this year, and I didn't disagree. I thought that was a great pick. Now, I kind of had some contentions about it. Obviously, their lineup had to be better, and their rotation had to get healthier, but I didn't think it was a bad pick because I think it makes a lot of sense. But right now, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, they are just not good. They're below 500. They're not... I mean, at this point, how can you expect them to win that division? I mean, you'd be lucky to get a wild card. Even if you had a phenomenal rest of the season, the next 100 or so games. You're not going to win that division when the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks are playing as well as they are. So, yeah, it's tough to see them maybe even making the postseason at this point, which is crazy to think. But, I mean, let's take a look, right? So right now, the Padres are in 4th place. You've got to contend with the NL East, which could very well take both of the wild card spots, or 2 of the 3 anyway. I think there's 3. There might be 20 wild card spots I don't know how many there are. There's a good amount. But even let's just say there's 3 wild card spots in each league. So you're going to have, let's just say that the division winners right now stay the way they are. So your division winners would be the Braves, the Brewers, and the Diamondbacks or Dodgers because they're tied. So that would mean that the Dodgers probably are going to steal a wild card spot, if not the Diamondbacks. So you got one there. And then you're going to have to contend with the New York Mets, who are going to very well be in contention for a wild card spot at this point, if not that division. The Philadelphia Phillies, who may or may not bounce back. The Miami Marlins, who may or may not continue to be as good as they are. And then you've got Pittsburgh, who, if they keep on this current track, they're going to be in contention for a wild card spot too. So you've got 6 or 7 teams that are in contention for 3 wild card spots. You've got to separate yourselves if you are the Padres. I mean, you're going to have to really book it at this point. So it's difficult for me to even see the Padres making the playoffs at this point, which is just absurd to say. But hey, hopefully they do. They're a really good team. They'd be a lot of fun in the postseason if they were all healthy and good to go. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But those are a few of the teams. I know I talk about a lot of teams there, but I mean, it's been a surprising season. Let's be honest. It's been a very odd season this year in MLB. So those are just some of the teams that surprised me so far this season. Okay, here we go. Time to talk about the thing that hurts me in my tum-tum very much. So, yeah, look, no secret here on this channel, guys. You see it? Well, actually, not that way. That way, I pointed in the wrong direction. That's how out of it I am. I'm a Celtics fan, guys. You know, I bleed green. Always will. You can see that. And, man... a week ago or so, I posted a video about a half an hour long. It was basically a rant as to how I was so angry that the Celtics had won Game 4, right? And the reason why, to sum it up, although I hope you guys still do check out that video, if anything, just because I'm sure some people just like to watch my pain, is to sum it up, the reason I was so mad was because I didn't want to have any hope anymore. I just wanted you to rip the Band-Aid off. I wanted to have a full off season where everybody was saying to fire the coach and to trade Jaylen Brown and to do all that stuff just like we do every year when we lose. Although this year there might actually be some merit. I'll get to that. Trust me, I'll get to that. But I just didn't want to have any hope, right? That was the whole. That was pretty much the summation of it. If I had to sum it up in one sentence. And I said on that video, and in public, and in private, and in every other way. I mean, I don't hide it, right? Is I wouldn't have hope until we won Game 6. And so the Celtics. I don't remember if it was the night I recorded or if it was the day after. I think it was the night of. I don't remember. They won Game 5. And they won it pretty convincingly and in a great game where they just dominated from start to finish. So that was great. That was fun. But again, I still didn't have any hope that they'd win the series and win a championship until they won Game 6. And then I watched Game 6. And, I brought my wife up a couple times throughout this podcast's lifespan, but I don't bring her up a ton. But I'm going to bring her up here because you can ask her, anyone on this channel, feel free to leave a comment asking my wife, is Tyler telling the truth? And I will answer for her, and you will just never know. No, I'm kidding. But the point is you can ask her, I cried like a blubbering 7-year-old girl. It was just, and not even out of, like, happiness. It was out of just, the game was so sheer chaos and so ridiculous and crazy and unorthodox. Every adjective you can think of to be different. That's what the game was. People made arguments as to who should have won the game. I argue neither team should have won that game. But if I did have to pick a team that should have won the game, it would have been the Miami Heat. Because the Celtics did everything to Kingdom Come to lose that game. They did. I tweeted it. I said it right after the game. The Celtics did everything they could to lose this game, and God just would not let them lose the game. For some reason. He wouldn't allow it. I don't know why. It was one of those things, I don't know. I said the Miami Heat should have won because they, at the very least, played fantastic in the fourth quarter. So, you know what? If you play fantastic in the fourth quarter and it's a reasonably close game, you probably deserve to win that game. So, Celtics tried to choke it away as best they could, and it just didn't happen. Derek White. Listen, what a turnaround that guy's had. There were Celtics fans calling for his head. I was not one of them. I love Derek White. I have always thought that he was a good fit in Boston. Would you have liked him to have been a better shooter last year in the finals? Sure. Would you have liked him to have a little bit better of a postseason than he had? Sure. Would you have liked him to not kind of disappear in the Philadelphia series for most of it? Absolutely. But listen, the guy was second team all defense this year. He had a really great year. He averaged 13 points on like 40% shooting from three. I mean, that's the best season he's had shooting-wise in his entire career. He said at the end of the season last year, I know what I have to do. I have to get in the gym and I have to shoot threes and I have to get better at it because that's what this team needs me to do. And guess what? He did that. He did everything he was asked. And more. He had a great season. He started sometimes. He came off the bench. He did anything that the team asked him to do. And he did it in a great way. So good for you, Derek White. That moment, I wish the Celtics had won the series. If for any reason, because that moment where he tipped the ball in with 0.1 seconds left to win the game in Game 6, that would go down as one of the greatest moments of all time. It was crazy to me when I saw the stat that everybody who watches basketball, especially in the 80s, knows of the shot that Michael Jordan hit to beat the Cavs in Game 7 of the playoffs. Or I think it was the Eastern Conference Finals or semifinals. I don't know anymore. it was elimination game. I don't know if it was game 7. It was an elimination game. He kind of like, you know, readjusted in midair and shot it, and then he jumped up in the air and he's pumping his fists like that. Everybody's seen that clip that's watched basketball for even a year probably at this point. Everybody knows that clip, and if you haven't, look it up. You might recognize it. That shot and the Derek White tip-in that happened in Game 6 are the only 2 times in NBA history that in an elimination game, the team that was going to get eliminated had somebody hit a buzzer-beating, game-winning shot when they were losing at the time. There have been plenty, a couple of times where the game was tied. For instance, that Kawhi Leonard shot for the Raptors against the 76ers a few years ago. The game was tied at that point, so that does not qualify for this. Damian Lillard had just an amazing shot, 2 amazing shots, one against the Thunder, one against the Rockets, I believe, that won them the game and won them the series. The Trailblazers were not the team that was going to be eliminated if they lost that game. Against the Houston Rockets, I believe it would have been going to Game 7 with Portland up 3-2 in that game. And then the next time, I think Portland was up 3-1. So they weren't the team that was going to get eliminated at that point. So you're talking about Derek White's shot was up there with a Michael Jordan highlight that everyone knows in terms of playoff magnitude. That is insane. I had no idea those were the only 2. So good for you, Derek White. I hope... Obviously, losing Game 7 is going to sour your offseason as it should in a lot of ways. But, I mean, I hope that he takes that moment and lives it forever because, man, that must have been so cool. And it was so cool to see for me, too. But let me tell you, I mentioned earlier I cried like a blubbering idiot. The Celtics were up by 10 or 9 with 3 minutes and 5 seconds left or something like that. And they just choked it away. They refused to score. They refused to do anything on offense. They couldn't stop anybody. They kept fouling. I mean, they were doing everything to lose, and they didn't. And once I got done composing myself, after about 20 minutes of just going mentally and emotionally insane, I realized that I had hope again. I had hope that the Celtics would be the first team in NBA history to come back from down 3-0. And all they had to do was play the way they've been playing and go onto their home floor and win. The Miami Heat, outside of Game 1 and Game 3, they didn't score more than 104 points, I think. I think it was 104, might be 106, but they didn't score more than 104 points in any of these games, guys. So, and in Game 7, guess what? They scored 103 points. Scored 103 points. And you know what happened? The Boston Celtics scored 84 points. The Boston Celtics went out after coming back from 3-0 down. Think about how difficult that is to come back from 3-0 down in a series. They had to win in Miami twice. And instead of finishing it off and being the history makers, they went out and did what I thought they'd do in Game 4, and they laid the biggest egg I have ever seen a team make as a Celtics fan. I should say the biggest egg I've ever seen a Celtics team make. Because listen, I'm not going to lie to you. Phoenix last year laid a pretty darn big egg in Game 7 against the Mavericks. I don't know how you could possibly lay an egg bigger than that. What did they score? 68 points in the whole game? I mean, on their home floor? That's a pretty darn big egg. I'm not going to be able to top that. This is not worse than that. That is just appalling. But this was the second biggest egg I've seen a team lay in a Game 7. Maybe even in any game in the playoffs that I've seen. Now, you could talk about LeBron's early years in Miami Heat, right, where he played some really bad games in the finals. Cool. The whole team didn't lay an egg, guys. If you want to even say LeBron laid an egg, you can. but their whole team didn't lay an egg. The whole entire Boston Celtics team laid an egg. Yeah, Derek White had a good third quarter for a couple minutes there, but look at his final stats. Pretty sure he shot like 5 for 14 and 2 for 9 from 3 or something along those lines. That's not a good stat line. Jaylen Brown led our team in points, but if you think he had a good game, not even close. He had probably the worst game I have ever seen a superstar have. Because, yeah, Jaylen Brown's a superstar, whether you like it or not, guys. You might not think so after Game 7, but he's a second-team All-NBA player. So, at the very least, he is a bona fide star, if not a superstar at this point. So, guess what? I've never seen a star like him lay an egg as big as he did in that game. It was absolutely inexcusable how he played. Jaylen Brown had more turnovers than the Miami Heat had turnovers in that game. Miami Heat for the entire game had 7 turnovers. Jaylen Brown, by himself, had 8 turnovers. Every time he put the ball on the floor, somebody was swiping the ball away from him. Jaylen Brown, who has apparently been working on his handles for the last 3 years to try to get better, every time he plays the Miami Heat, he just gets stripped all the time. He can't hold on to the basketball. He can't dribble with his left hand. He can't drive to the left. It just hasn't worked. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because Game 7 was over in the first 30 seconds. Jason Tatum rolled his ankle and that was it. You could literally hear the air go out of the arena. You could feel the air come out of the Celtics team. Their big dog was going to have a limp for the rest of the game, and that was that. Now listen, I'm going to get back to Jaylen Brown because he deserves a lot of fury. And he's gotten a lot of fury, and I know I'm a little late to the party here, but I haven't given him my fury yet, so I'm going to do it. Let's start with Jason Tatum. Last year, I said I'm not giving him any more excuses. Last year, I was willing to believe that he had something wrong with his wrist, and maybe that's why he didn't play well in the finals. But I'm not giving him a pass this year, even though I kind of want to, because, look, what am I going to say, right? I mean, I saw him play in Game 7 against Philly and drop 51 points. So I know he's a clutch player, and he can play like that in big games. I've seen it. He did it in Game 6 in Milwaukee last year, too. So, yeah, like, he can play big time in big-time games. I've seen it happen. But I know he also can lay an egg in big-time games, too. So, this go-round, this time, he rolled his ankle. It clearly was swollen. He was clearly bothering him. Every movement he made was difficult. He couldn't really guard Jimmy Butler anymore because the lateral quickness wasn't there. So, like, I want to give him a pass. I do, because there's not much you can do when you get hurt in the moment. He tried to gut it out, and he did. I mean, he didn't play well. He only had 12 points, but, I mean, by the numbers, he didn't play as bad as the rest of his teammates did. I think he shot, 5 for 12 or something. I mean, that's not great, but that's not atrocious either. And when you're hurt, okay. But all that being said, I can't give him a pass because he wasn't there in games 1, 2, or 3. I'll give him a pass for Game 7. Fine. I'll give him a 1-game pass. It's not his fault the Celtics lost in Game 7. But it is his fault, partially, because the Celtics lost in Games 1, 2, and 3. If he is the best player on that team, in some way he has to be the leader. Now, from everything I've seen, and this scares me in a lot of ways, because I have always been a big proponent of if you are the best player on a team, you have to have some kind of leadership role outside of just being on the field. You can't just be the best player on the field and have no leadership qualities off of it. Because you know what? I felt like that was a big part of my life. Not necessarily that I was the best player on the field, but I was a captain in high school when I was playing baseball, and guess what? I had no leadership qualities off the field. I had none, and I hated myself for it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to figure all that out. So I just said I have to play well in the field. And sure, it may have worked a little bit, but I still feel like I could have done more. You can't just be really good on the court and not have any leadership qualities in any other area, in the locker room, off the field, when people are hanging out, in the media, like whatever it is, you gotta have some leadership qualities. From everything I've heard, the leaders of that team have always been Al Horford and Marcus Smart, and they are not the two best players. In case you figure that out, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the two best players, and they are not the emotional leaders of that team. I mean, that's scary. Like, yeah, I'm not to say anything bad about Marcus or Al Horford. You can use the leadership qualities of other players. Like, guess what? Draymond Green, for the last 3 years, has not been one of the best players on that team. Yeah, he's a starter, but he's not been the best player on that team. It's always been Steph, and it's always been Clay, outside of when Clay was hurt. But those are the two best players, and they have leadership qualities, especially Steph, on the court. But also they utilize Draymond Green's leadership ability, even if he's not one of the two best players on the team. So you can still use the leadership qualities these other players give you, like Marcus Smart, his energy, his hustle, his defensive ability, his mostly timely shot making. That's all well and good. Derek White, quiet stoicism, but just does the job and does it well. Robert Williams is a defensive anchor. That's great too. But Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown need to be the emotional leaders of that team too. They can't just be the best players and then defer to everyone else. Now, I'm not saying that that's all they're doing. I'm sure that they have some kind of voice in that locker room. Of course they do. They're the two best players. But they need to be the two main voices in that locker room too. So, I don't know. It bugs me in so many ways. And Marcus Smart didn't play well in Game 7, but I can't really blame him because he played so well in that series, especially Games 4, 5, and 6. I mean, he was the only one who made threes. I think Derek White made 1 or 2 threes in Game 6, and Marcus Smart made the rest. So, yeah, I mean, Marcus Smart, it's hard to blame him for this. He's done as good as he can at this point. Al Horford, I will say, as much as I hate to say it, he really stunk up the joint shooting the ball in the playoffs. I mean, he shot 40-something% from the field in the regular season. You thought he was taking a big step up in the shooting department. And then in the playoffs, I mean, he wasn't even missing by a little bit. He was missing by a lot most of the time. So, that's disappointing. Robert Williams his story continues to confound me. I've said this for years. Why is he not playing more minutes? I know he can't shoot. I know he jumps a lot and he falls for pump fakes a lot. But he's gotten a lot better at that. He was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year last year before he got injured. So you're talking about a defensive anchor that I know I've heard guys say there were celebrating happening when they found out Rob was starting because they like having Rob starting. He has the best plus-minus on the team. He's good when he's out there. Why does he not play more? Why does he get 20 minutes a night? I don't get it. Are you afraid he was going to get hurt again? Because if you're afraid he's going to get hurt again, then why did you pay him for 5 years to stick around? Now, I'm not saying, obviously, Brad Stevens is the one that paid him and Joe Mazzulla is the one that plays him. So, obviously, there might just be different mindset there, but I'm pretty sure if Brad Stevens goes up to Joe Mazzulla and says, hey, play Rob a little bit more, he's going to play him a little more. Brad Stevens is the boss, so, I mean, if Brad Stevens is the one saying, hey, let's ease Rob back, let's hold him back, it's the playoffs. What are you holding back for? If he gets hurt, he could just get surgery in the offseason. Now he's going to have a full healthy offseason, which is great. That's wonderful. But I feel like you could have done more with him. All that to say this, I know I talked about Jaylen Brown a little bit already, but I have to say this now. Jaylen Brown was the worst player on the floor in Game 7. I mean, he was atrociously bad. Horrible. And quite frankly, he was horrible the whole series outside of the first quarter in Game 6. So, what do you do with him at this point? I have no idea. Look, when the Celtics drafted Jaylen Brown, I didn't have really much of a clue who the heck he was. I knew he was athletic, I knew he was long, I knew he was rangy, and I knew he was a decent defender, and that was about it. He has developed his game in so many ways to be one of the best players in basketball. And so I respect that a lot. And he has gotten better every single year that he has been in the league. But Jaylen Brown has now been on the Boston Celtics for 7 years. 7. Jaylen Brown is not a third-year player anymore. And I know we make jokes about Jason Tatum always being 19 years old. But Jaylen Brown is not 19 years old anymore. Jaylen Brown is 25, maybe even 26 at this point, depending on when his birthday lies. I don't know when his birthday is. But Jaylen Brown, at this point, should not be having such giant holes in his game. For an all-star, for a second-team All-NBA player, he shouldn't every single year not be able to dribble. Maybe not necessarily not be able to dribble, because we've seen him have some good moves, and he's gotten better at putting together some crafty moves and getting good mid-range shots. Sure, but he can't dribble in traffic, especially with his left hand. That has been a problem for Jaylen Brown his entire career. His whole career, he cannot dribble into traffic with his left hand. And the Miami Heat, for the entire series, forced him to dribble into traffic with his left hand. And in Game 7, all he did was dribble into traffic with his left hand. And they stole the ball over and over and over and over and over again. So, at this point, it's hard for me to sit here and have much hope that Jaylen Brown is going to be a guy that I can count on in big games consistently. We've seen him have really good games and big games in big moments. In fact, in the finals last year, he was the best player for the Celtics, not Jason Tatum. And people were saying last year maybe we should trade Jason Tatum, which I always thought was absurd. But right now, I don't know what to think. I know I said at work at one point, if I had to trade one of the two, it might be Jason Tatum, because at least Jaylen Brown can play, is not so absurdly bad in these bad games that he has that he just single-handedly tanks the whole team, which I feel like Tatum has done a couple times. But then I saw Game 7 and I realized, oh no, he can single-handedly tank an entire team too if he has a bad day. Yeah. I saw that with my own two eyes. In Game 7, he literally sabotaged the Celtics over and over and over and over again. Whenever they get momentum, turnover. Or missed shot. Or terrible shot that he should never have taken. Or lets a guy go by him. Or loses a guy on a back cut. I mean, he completely... And it's not all on Jaylen Brown, obviously. It's on everybody that played. But goodness gracious. He came out on fire in the first quarter, didn't he? I thought it was going to be one of those Jaylen Brown games where he was going to put up 30 points and we were going to coast to victory. But then Jimmy Butler realized, oh wait, just make him go left. My ball. Mine. Thank you. Just keep going. Steal. Yep. Perfect. Mine again. So what do we do? What do we do? I have no idea. At this point, I'm just ranting about Jaylen Brown, so I'll wrap it up with this. While my initial instinct when I saw the game was, we have to trade Jaylen Brown right this minute because I can't pay him $300 million. I don't know what choice you have. I don't know what choice you have if you're the Celtics. I don't know how you're going to trade him. Because if you trade him after what he just did, you're not going to get anything for him. And if you think, I mean, the only teams that are going to even think of paying him $40 million, $50 million a year is going to be a team that's awful. So what are you going to get from them? Draft picks? No. The Celtics championship window is right now. Right now. You have maybe another year or two. But the problem is if you don't trade him, you have to re-sign him or let him go for nothing in free agency. And then for a 26-year-old second-team All-NBA player, and who knows what he's going to end up being next year, that means when he left for free, you got nothing. You got nothing for him. Do you really want to take that chance? But if you do not want to take that chance, that means you either have to trade him for who knows what, or sign him for $300 million. Look, I've loved Jaylen Brown, but he's not worth $300 million. He's not. He's not that good. You're talking about, at that point, you're a top 5 player in the NBA or a top 10 player in the NBA. He is not a top 10 player in the NBA. He showed that in Game 7. He is a really good number 2. That is what Jaylen Brown is. And I'm not sure if he can ever be a 1. Because when Jason Tatum got hurt in the first 30 seconds of the game, you would think that Jaylen Brown, realizing that he is Robin to Jason Tatum's Batman, would step up and say, okay, now it's up to me to lead this team to the promised land because my guy over here rolled his ankle and he's not doing good. And I've got to be the one that carries us, and I might have to carry us the first few games in the finals too while this guy recuperates. You'd think that he would think that. You'd think that he would know that and he would step up, but instead he realized he had to be the number 1. Miami realized he had to be the number 1 and beat him up for 48 minutes. Or I guess in that instance, 47 minutes and 30 seconds. Because 30 seconds into the game, that's when they went, well, Jason Tatum's not the number 1 anymore because he's got one ankle. So Jaylen Brown is going to be the guy that we have to focus on now. And all Jaylen Brown did was roll over and over and over and over again. It was awful to watch. Awful to see. It was like watching a car crash, but happening over a 2-hour span. You knew what was going to happen, you just didn't want to watch, but you had no choice. Oh. So what do I think the Celtics should do? I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to re-sign him. And it looks like that's what they're doing. I mean, it says that they want Jaylen Brown to stay. Now, if Jaylen Brown doesn't want to be in Boston, then yeah, trade him. If he doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want to be here. But I don't think they have a choice. Because your options are either let him go for free and see him possibly turn into a 30-point-per-game scorer for a team that's not very good. Or you trade him away and close your championship window unless you could get back somebody who is as valuable, which I don't think you're gonna. I mean, who did they trade him for? The only one that even pops into my head right now would be Damian Lillard, which I would love. He's my second favorite player in basketball already. He doesn't even play for the Celtics. I would love for Damian Lillard to come play for the Celtics. But you think that the Boston Celtics and the way that they play defense and the way that they run their team, you know what would happen to Damian Lillard in 2 games? He'd blow out his knee or he'd score 15 points a night. Because that play style is not suitable for the way Damian Lillard plays. Damian Lillard needs the ball in his hands all the time. Jason Tatum needs the ball in his hands all the time, pretty much. So, I don't know if that would mesh. I'd still love to see it. I'd still take the chances because I love Damian Lillard, but That's the only one that pops into my head that you might be able to do. You might be able to convince the Portland Trailblazers to give us Damian Lillard, move Marcus Smart to the 2, I guess, or move him to the bench and have Derek White start at the 2. I don't know. And then start double big. I have no idea what you're going to do if you're the Celtics, but I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to re-sign him. I don't think that at this point, I think you've invested too much time into Jaylen Brown to just let him go. Now, he might not want to be in Boston, and if they try to re-sign him and he doesn't re-sign, then that's a whole nother can of worms. But I don't think they can trade him at this point because Jason Tatum has said he wants Jaylen Brown here. Brad Stevens has said he wants Jaylen Brown here. I don't know about the other teammates, what they've said about it, if they said anything, but I'm sure Marcus wants Jaylen Brown around. They've been teammates for 6 or 7 years at this point. So, I don't know. I don't think you have a choice. I think you have to re-sign him. We'll see what happens. But yeah. That's it. That's my rant about Game 7. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a very long week, so I appreciate you guys being patient. I'm going to get this out to you as soon as I can. I think when you guys watch this, it should be Saturday at this point. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Hey guys, me again. I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the Lopes Goes Last podcast. It means the world to me that you decided to stick all the way to the end. That's super cool. So thank you again. And if you really, really like what you see, I'd love for you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with all your family and friends because, you know, this is my passion project. This is what I love to do, and I really want the sucker to grow. And the only way that that can happen is through you guys, is if you guys can help me out. So again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, share with all your friends and family. That's the only way this is going to grow. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.